City Council Candidate Forum, sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Boulder County. My name is Josephine Porter. I'm a proud member of the League, and I'm pleased to serve as today's moderator. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. The League was founded in 1920 for nearly 100 years, and we'll celebrate our 100th anniversary next year. We have encouraged, informed, and active participation in government and influenced public policy through education and advocacy. To remain nonpartisan, the League never supports or opposes political candidates or parties. The forum is being broadcast on Channel 8. Candidates may link to the video when it is released, but may not place any portion of the forum on their own website or social media. According to FCC policy, candidate forums must be broadcast in their entirety, except by media reporting on the event. Candidates or their staff are asked not to record or photograph this forum. There will be 6 Boulder City Council seats open for the November 2019 election. The top 4 vote winners will receive 4-year terms. The 5th vote winner will receive a 2-year term, and the 6th vote winner will fulfill a vacancy for a 2-year term. The elected council then selects the mayor and mayor pro tem from among its members. The format for today's forum will be as follows. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement. We will then begin with questions submitted from you, the audience. Audience members may submit questions by writing them on index cards available from our volunteers. Hopefully you got some of the index cards as you walked in. Please raise your hand right now or at any time if you need a card or a pencil or a pen. Once you have written your question, please catch the attention of one of our, if the League ushers could please hold up their hands, catch the attention of one of our volunteers and give the card to them. Questions should be addressed to all candidates rather than directing a question to a particular candidate. Our question screening team over here will check questions for clarity and will possibly combine several similar questions received from the audience into one question on that topic. We will try to ask the candidates as many questions as time permits. Please, audience, refrain from clapping, booing, or otherwise showing your approval or disapproval of any response. Disruption will only delay the forum. Brochures, campaign literature, signs are only permitted in designated areas downstairs in the City Hall. The candidates are seated in the order that they will appear on the general ballot. We're going to start with our opening statements, and candidate Dolan will go first.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for the millions of people watching at home on TV. My name is Brian Dolan, and I've spent my whole entire life in Boulder. My father spent his whole entire life in Boulder. I live in the house that my dad grew up in. My wife and I chose to raise our family here in Boulder because it's such a special place. I know Boulder very well. But over the last 10 years, there have been some major changes that don't fit with what makes Boulder special. When you speak to most long-term residents, they don't like the direction we're headed in. There's been manic growth and development that's overwhelming our infrastructure currently. The demand for people who want to move to Boulder is unlimited, and we can't nor should we try to meet that demand. We need to consider the current residents of Boulder and their needs, not the needs of developers who don't have a vested interest in Boulder. There's a real cost to adding more density, and that's the quality of life for people who live here now. I want to represent the people of Boulder who live here, and not have the developers shape what Boulder is. Thank you.
Candidate Friend.
Good morning. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for having us and all of you for being here. I'm Rachel Friend. I went to Stanford University for undergrad and then Notre Dame for law school. I have spent most of my legal career sort of advocating for the most vulnerable among us. Right now I am providing pro bono representation to individuals who are detained in Aurora and are seeking asylum in this country. And my decision to run was a pretty difficult one. It meant that I would be redirecting efforts away from some of the work that I feel is pretty important on the state and federal front. But after spending a lot of hours sitting where you all are sitting and seeing some of the dysfunction in the processes in Boulder, I decided to step into the race. Primarily what I saw was that we are not operating at a very efficient, transparent, or sort of sensible level. So I am running for city council because I think we need to be fact-based and data-based in our decision-making. Thank you.
Candidate Joseph.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here with all of you. My name is Junie Joseph, and I'm running for Boulder City Council. I'm running for City Council because socioeconomic diversity and political inclusion matters. My personal experience with the lack of affordable housing in Boulder has compelled me to run for City Council. When I first moved here to Boulder, I had issues finding affordable housing. And I believe in a place as diverse as Boulder, who believe in inclusion, that is unacceptable. I've had the opportunity of also volunteering at the Boulder Shelter, and I see people who live here in this community who can't find affordable housing. And I think, again, that's unacceptable. In addition to my personal experience with the challenges of finding affordable housing, I have dedicated my life to service. I have a track record of service. Over the past 4 years, I have worked in the human rights and development field, and I believe I can contribute to making Boulder a more socioeconomically diverse and politically inclusive place. My top 3 priorities are transit-oriented affordable housing, government efficiency, and open space management. Thank you.
Candidate Wallach.
Good morning. Delighted to see you all. My name is Mark Wallach, and I am running because I have a background in real estate law and real estate development, which I think can contribute to the conversation about the most divisive issues in our city today, which are land use and housing issues. I have a fairly substantial background in all of those areas. And while I do not presume to have all of the answers to these difficult questions, I do think I can ask the right questions about them and work with other members of council to actually get to solutions that will benefit the community of Boulder, both in the near term and the long-term future. So I would urge you to see my website, wallachforcouncil.com, and I hope you will like what you read there, and we'll be discussing more about some of those views today. Thank you.
Candidate Duran.
Good afternoon, good morning, good day to all of you watching this broadcast. My name is Benita Duran. I'm a 5th-generation Coloradoan, born in Pueblo, Colorado, and rooted in southern Colorado and northern New Mexico. My mom is a resident of Pueblo, and she's an active member of the League of Women Voters chapter there. I'm bringing to this opportunity years of city experience and city work. I worked for the city of Boulder for 9 years, and for 4 years I was the assistant city manager. I'm bringing to this opportunity nonprofit expertise and experience. I currently am on the board of Boulder Community Health, and in my past volunteer experiences, I've been on the Community Foundation Board, chaired that board, on the Shelter Board, Attention Homes, YWCA, to name a few. I'm bringing private sector experience. I've worked with municipalities in Colorado and throughout the state and want to bring that perspective. I have an undergraduate degree in economics from DU and a master's degree in public administration from CU. Most importantly, I've lived the social equity, social justice experience here in Boulder for 25 years. I've voted here for most of my adult life, and I know I can help make positive change happen to make Boulder more welcoming, diverse, and engaged and hopeful for the future. Thank you.
Candidate Chukla.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Corina Julca, and I'm from Peru. I'm a citizen of the United States. I've been living in Boulder for 5 years and in Colorado for 10. The main reason why I'm running for city council is because the place where I live, I found that it's terribly under the danger of being demolished. We are in the opportunity zone. One of my apartments is probably the least affordable, market affordable apartments in the city. I'm a grassroots candidate, and I'm trying to bring some honesty and transparency. What I'm pursuing with me trying to run for council is that I want everyone's voice to be here in this city. Thank you.
Candidate Yates.
Good morning. My name is Bob Yates, and for the last 4 years, I've had the honor and privilege of serving as one of your representatives here on City Council. I spend every Tuesday night sitting right here. sometimes till Wednesday morning. We've accomplished a lot, I think, in the last 4 years on housing and transportation and climate change, on homelessness, but we have a lot of work to do. You may not agree with every vote I've taken over the last 4 years or every position I've taken. It would be, I think, kind of a rare convergence to find two people in Boulder that agree on absolutely everything. But I hope that over the course of the last 4 years, you found me to be accessible and open and transparent. I know many of you in the room subscribe to my monthly newsletter, the Boulder Bulletin. There's about 4,000 subscribers here in town. And I explain every vote I take and let you know every position I'm about to take and invite you to participate. So I hope that you'll give me an opportunity to continue to serve you for the next 4 years. We've got a lot of work to do on transportation to make it safe, housing to make it inclusive, homelessness to help folks get off the street and be compassionate for them, and climate change so that it's meaningful and replicable. Thank you. Again, my name is Bob Yates. Thank you for this opportunity.
Candidate Swetlik.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Adam Swetlik. First of all, thank you to the League for hosting us. This is always probably the best candidate forum of all, so thank you. I've lived here in Boulder for the last 13 years, 10 of them as a renter. I've been working at least 2 jobs ever since I graduated college from CU in order to stay here and live here in Boulder. And it took all that time working 2 jobs in order to save enough for a 1-bedroom condo built in the 70s. So we clearly have a housing issue here. And after I ran 2 years ago, you may remember that, I was appointed to the Housing Advisory Board and reappointed unanimously by including these 2 gentlemen. Thank you very much. So I've been focused primarily on our housing issues here in Boulder, the solutions to them, and what we should be doing to actually solve these issues. I'm also very, very interested in improving the city's engagement process. Right now, I just feel that more residents need to be heard before we make major decisions, especially about development. Thank you so much.
Candidate Brockett.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for having us here. My name is Aaron Brockett, and for the last 4 years, it's been the honor of my life to serve the community of Boulder on City Council. And right now I'm running for re-election. So I'm a father of 2 young kids, a longtime small business owner in the North Boulder. Started a business here with my wife 20 years ago. And in the last 4 years, I've been working hard on housing affordability and better transportation options for cyclists and transit, working on social justice issues and to strengthen our social safety net and to fight against climate change here at the local level. So if you're willing to support me again for another 4 years, my plan is to focus particularly on principles of good and fair governance if I'm elected to another term, make sure we have a steady hand on the tiller here in Boulder, and make sure that all of our residents feel that every decision is made in a fair and proper manner. Thank you.
Candidate Solani.
First of all, thank you very much to the League for having us. It's great to be here. I moved to Boulder in 1975 to go to school. I was up in the mountains. And I have stayed here since then. I've run 2 small businesses. I'm a single dad and raised my kids here. The reason I'm running is I find it very compelling in this election to look at the vision of the town that we perhaps share or do not, and to know that in a very, very short time, this town has an opportunity to change in a magnificent manner. We have now opened up the town to out-of-state investments. We have embraced some Trumpians to come in and develop the Opportunity Zone. And this is one of our last opportunities, not mine, but as a city, to perhaps maintain the beauty and the ideas of some of our predecessors. I would bring in Ruth Wright and say how wonderful she's been in her vision, and gentlemen like Jim Crane. Thank you so much.
Candidate McCord.
Good morning, and thank you so much for being here. Our bodies are ever changing. Our hair is growing, sometimes it's falling out. We're growing lengthwise, sometimes widthwise. And the only way for our bodies to stop changing is for them to die. Now, likewise, our city is changing. And if our city ceases to change, it will be dead. Now, I've been a member of this community for the past 9 years. I'm a business owner, a homeowner. I'm a current commissioner with Boulder Housing Partners, and I've been a part of that board for the past 6 years. I'm an experienced lobbyist and facilitator. Now, I have the experience of successfully bringing together disparate groups to bring them to consensus. None of us want our city to die. And as your next city councilwoman, I will usher us through this change in a way that recognizes our various perspectives. Let's do this. Monticello Obra, vote Nikki.
Candidate Orba.
Hello. Hello, League. Thank you so much for hosting us today. I am an activist, a scientist, a life coach, a dancer, and I'd like to be your next councilwoman. I have a degree in actuarial science, which is risk management, from DePaul University, and I have, and I dance on the ground and in the air, near and far. I like to spread good news, and I like to highlight what is going right in our society. I'm running because I taught mathematics for 4 years. I have a teaching license in secondary mathematics education from CU Boulder, and I loved teaching people how to solve problems. And now I'd like to solve bigger civic problems.
Candidate Cure.
Thank you, Josephine. First of all, 100 years of the League of Women Voters is something to be said, so congratulations on that. So for the past 16 years, I've run an organic farm, Cure Organic Farm, and Boulder City Council is a dirty job, so I've got some experience in the dirt of our local politics and our local abilities to get things done. I'm a blue-collar worker in the degree to which we need to have a degree of common values for common ground. I'm an independent. I'm not beholden to any particular prescribed notion of what Boulder should be. I think that Boulder should be in regards to what we find as a community to be the best practice to move our community forward, inclusive, empowering. And so as a result of that, I've found that the best way of doing that is to find common ground. And the thing that I found in common ground is environmental protection, economic vitality, and especially in regards to our neighborhoods, the ability to protect them so that their character is beholden to the people that are living there and not to people who are trying to impose something upon them. Thank you for your vote.
Oh, next, first I want to tell Candidate Orba, we apparently made a mistake and cut you off at 15 seconds. I'm going to give you a chance right after I finish with this. Candidate Peterson was unable to be here, but she has sent in, as we allow the candidates to do, a 1-minute opening statement, which I will read as much as I can get in 1 minute. So I'll keep an eye on, I'm going to, yes, this is where she fits here between Cure and McIntyre on the ballot. So that's why I'm reading it now, and then I'll give Candidate Orba a chance to finish up your opening. Susan is a recently retired professional engineer who spent her career inspiring people to achieve big, innovative ideas. Now she is passionate about standing up for the things that make Boulder great, as directed by the people who live and work here. The top priorities on her list are better management of growth, development, and traffic, getting more serious about climate action, respecting and protecting Boulder's natural beauty and environment, fostering a diverse, vibrant, and sustainable community that is accessible to people of all economic levels. Quote, "My parents instilled in me that you should leave a place better than you found it. I came to Boulder 25 years ago to raise my son in a place where he could ride his bike to soccer practice, a place that was inclusive enough that I would see his teachers at the grocery store and our mailman at the coffee shop, and a place that was dominated by a respect for the beauty of the outdoors. It worked out great for both me and my son, and I want to do my part." Candidate Orba, 15 seconds.
I'm currently a life coach. I'm also a landlord. And at my heart, I'm a public servant. And I would love to serve our beautiful town. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for the confusion. Candidate McIntyre.
I'm Mark McIntyre. I was not born here, but Boulder is my home. I have lived here for 42 years. I have 4 generations of family living in Boulder County, ranging from grandchildren to elderly parents. So I have some experience with kind of all phases of life here in Boulder. I have 32 years running and managing a small business and employing people. During my entire time here, I have served the community on various boards and commissions, ranging from open space special commissions to housing and transportation. I currently serve on the city's Transportation Advisory Board and just finished a stint on the city's Campaign Finance Working Group. For all of the service, I have tried to bring 3 principles to bear on that service. That is stewardship of our environment, democracy and good governance, social justice and equity. And I'm very transparent, so if you visit my website, I've written out all my positions and answered all the questionnaires there. Thank you.
We'll now begin with our questions. We'll start with candidate friend and work to the right. What is your view on density versus neighborhood character? You have 1 minute to respond.
Sorry, I was asking for water. Could you repeat the question one more time?
Yes. What is your view on density versus neighborhood character?
Well, thanks for starting out with such a softball.
Here's some water.
Thank you, right. My concern with looking through the lens of neighborhood character is that's not very definable, and one of my 3 core principles is grounding our decisions based on fact and data. So when we talk about something like neighborhood character, I prefer that we drill down to something that is a tangible fact. Like, are we talking about noise? Are we talking about traffic? Are we talking about the volume of people living in a home? Neighborhood character is, as a term, something that I find difficult to quantify, and therefore don't discuss that too much. In terms of density, I think we need to look at that in the context of the climate crisis, and I think that housing and transportation and the climate are pretty inextricably intertwined. So when we're talking about density, I just want to make sure that we are looking at it through the prism of facts and data and tying it to the climate crisis. Thank you.
Candidate Joseph.
Thank you. This is a great question for me because I'm running on socioeconomic diversity and political inclusion. And I've talked about my own issue with finding affordable housing in Boulder. So affordable housing is very important to me. And you mentioned density. I don't believe it's just about density because we know there are cities in the United States that are highly dense, yet unaffordable. So it's not about density. It's about creating policies and regulations that allow people to live here in Boulder, people who want to live here. Because we know there are thousands of people every day who are traveling into Boulder, coming in and contributing to climate change. So how do we provide housing for these people? It's through mixed use, fill-ins, and ensuring that people who want to live here get to live here. Thank you.
Candidate Wallach.
I think there is demonstrably no connection between density and affordability. Again, as my colleague Junie has mentioned, most major cities in America are experiencing a great increase in their density and a great increase in their prices. I don't think there's any connection between those two. And in Boulder, we have a diverse set of neighborhoods. Some are denser than others. I think that variety is something we should promote and support. I don't believe everybody has to live in the same kind of housing. You should have the opportunity to choose what kind of housing you live in. And many people select their neighborhoods precisely for specific characteristics. North Boulder is denser than Chautauqua, and Boulder Junction is denser than some of the larger state parcels. I think everybody should have the opportunity to pick where they want to live. And I think there's a place in the world for a city of modest size and diverse housing choices. Thank you.
Candidate Duran.
Thank you. As it relates to density and neighborhood character, I look at opportunities to align along transit corridors, places where people can shop, walk, engage in community, neighborhood conversations. So things that I'm interested in are what we call 15-minute neighborhoods, right? Places that are convenient and easy for people to get to and get their errands run and grocery shopping and all of those kind of things. I'm supportive of mixed use, where there can be the small business, the therapist, the counselor, the home improvement worker who can have a little office studio space in these mixed-use developments. I'm interested in neighborhood benefits that include nonprofits where they can office and have a place to serve their clients. I think there are opportunities along transit-oriented areas where we can embrace density. ADUs are also an opportunity. Thank you.
Candidate Hukla.
Well, my opinion on density and affordability, I think there's no connection between density and affordability because the market in Boulder is like everything that is built in Boulder is pretty much unaffordable. More than 50% of people here in Boulder are renters. I'm one of them. I'm renting with my family for so many years, not just in Boulder, but in Colorado. The Opportunity Zone program is something that I believe, and it's been reported in the New York Times, but a lot of good, reliable journalists are not going to help with affordability at all. It's actually going to gentrify, and everything that is going to demolish is going to be built more expensive. So I think as a city, if we cannot build more affordable, we should have to preserve what is still left of affordable. Not only affordable housing, but also market affordable. We cannot let what happened already in the East Point apartments to happen to other places here in Boulder. Thank you.
Candidate Yates.
If you read my profile in today's Daily Camera, you know that I am very concerned about housing affordability, but I also recognize that there's no way mathematically or physically that we could house all of the in-commuters that come into Boulder. But for every family that we do house in Boulder that already works in Boulder and that commutes from some of our suburban cities, that's very meaningful for that particular family. So we don't want to give up. We want to create housing where we can in appropriate places. Some places, density does make sense. One place I can think of that we may have an opportunity to develop is the diagonal crossing out near the northeast entrance to the city. That may be an appropriate place for some dense housing because there's some good transportation there. But we also have to be very, very respectful of neighborhood character. Many of you in this audience have invested your life savings into your home, and you bought into a neighborhood that has a certain character, and you have expectations. As we are developing, for example, the Alpine Balsam neighborhood, where the former community hospital used to be, we need to be very, very respectful of that existing Newlands neighborhood and make sure that the density does not exceed what the neighborhood can carry.
Candidate Swetlik.
So people don't move to Boulder because it's going to be a bigger and bigger town. They move to Boulder because they love the small town feel. I've only ever lived in two places, here in Green Bay, Wisconsin, about 100,000 people each. I don't feel comfortable in a city much bigger than that, to be honest with you. And that's what I think most residents in Boulder feel as well. So it's my priority to make sure that we're not building things that are actually going to push people out of town. Right now, we build more and more big houses on large lots. We build really, really high-end luxury condos. That ends up raising property taxes on people surrounding. And that actually pushes people who have lived here for a very long time out of town. So I want to take steps that's going to reverse that trend, because I think it's super important that we keep existing residents here. I also want to provide much more permanent affordability when we are building things. I want to increase our inclusionary housing percentage from 25 to 35% and start putting head taxes on some of our largest corporations so that they pay for the affordable housing that they are not creating.
Candidate Brockett.
I just want to say that neighborhood character is made up in part of what is built in a neighborhood, but I think even more important is who are the people that live in a neighborhood. So I think, over time, our town has gotten increasingly expensive, and so the people that can live here are increasingly wealthy. So I support gentle infill kinds of ideas, like accessory dwelling units, as a way to make sure that people who used to be able to afford to live in our single-family neighborhoods still have an opportunity to live in them in, say, a mother-in-law apartment above a garage, something like that. But that is to say, though, density doesn't belong everywhere. I think you make sure and put denser buildings only along your transit corridors where there's good services, where you can have a 15-minute neighborhood, where you can walk or bike or take the bus to most of your daily and weekly needs. So you have to make sure that the dense stuff goes where there are the services and the infrastructure to support it. And meanwhile, in the single-family neighborhoods, really only look for the gentlest kinds of infills, but to still preserve some income diversity in our town.
Candidate Solani.
Well, this is a hot potato issue, of course, and I think everybody's fascinated by it. One of the things that I very much believe in is that our neighborhoods need to be and are defined by the people that live in them today. Of course, we can never accommodate the amount of people that would love to come into Boulder. It's simply not available. I don't think that the densification urgency we now see so greatly in town will in any way enhance affordability. It has proven it hasn't enhanced affordability. So one, I think our neighborhoods must be maintained, and I think that the neighborhood character is defined by the people that live there today.
Candidate McCord.
So this city has a 15% affordable housing goal, and that equals 256 units of affordable housing per year. Now, the reason why that's one of the pillars of my campaign is to give residents certainty that we need to be able to meet this goal in order to respond to the affordable housing need in our community. But I'm willing to negotiate with residents to make sure that we are putting not all of the units in one backyard, but asking those residents, what can the neighborhood bear, and making sure that we're getting to that number of 256 to meet our goals through sustainable infrastructure. And so that's my position on making sure that we have affordable housing and we're meeting the goals that we've set for ourselves as a community.
Candidate Orba.
We are getting denser. We can't build up, we can't build out. But we can absolutely mold where we get dense, and I feel that's our job as council people. I value neighborhood character and will advocate for preserving neighborhood character as we grow. I too believe in gentle infill and feel like Diagonal Plaza could be a little bit more dense, but would like to preserve the neighborhood density of Alpine Balsam. Thank you.
Candidate Cure.
Thank you, Josephine. So as Vice President of Historic Boulder, I've kind of got a skewed vision of that. You know, I feel like the importance of our neighborhoods, if you look at our history, the housing that has been built, whether that be in Martin Acres, you know, being built as worker housing, right? Chautauqua, the impetus for change was based upon need. And also, when we had that impetus for change, there was also the need to enhance that protection of the neighborhood and the people that were living in that. So to that degree, I think Alpine Balsam is the huge elephant literally in this room in regards to how are we addressing this. And I think that there is a degree to which we have to accommodate, as Nikki had said, you know, our citywide ability to get to 15% by 2035, while also maintaining the character of our neighborhoods, in addition to these opportunity zones on Diagonal Plaza are along major corridors, especially in regards to going to Longmont, so that we can build to accommodate those families and people living there.
Candidate McIntyre.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. I may lose some votes. When people talk about neighborhood character in Boulder, it's only because we are pretty much a homogeneous white community that we feel comfortable talking about it in these terms. And in fact, neighborhood character has been used as a term of racial suppression around our country, north, south. It's been used. So when I think about neighborhood character, I think about Boulder, and I think about rich, white, and suburban. And you know what? If we build some ADUs and we build some granny flats and we build some affordable housing and it makes Boulder more diverse, if that addresses our social justice goals and the greatest common good, then I'm all for it.
Candidate Dolan.
So I had planned for a huge talk here, but then what Mark said kind of changed that a little bit. So I'm all for diversity and adding diversity to Boulder. I think that that's a huge key, but current plans with adding ADUs to large lots don't make sense because there's no plan to make those affordable. So we just basically add more market rate housing and push people who can't afford to live here out even further, and that makes that difficult. So, I mean, as it's been proven throughout every large city in this nation and throughout the world, density doesn't add to affordability. Cramming more houses in there literally just makes the quality of life for the current residents go downhill. So we need to find a way to add more affordability through different kinds of growth and not the current way that we're going.
We're going to start with Candidate Joseph for this question. And this is a follow-up to the density question, and give everyone a chance to address the affordable housing issue. We have some mobile home parks and Section 8 housing for low-income people. Who is responsible for coordinating the home parks and Section 8? Secondly, what do you think City Council can do specifically to do about our affordable housing crisis? Candidate Joseph.
So the question is, what can we do to better manage mobile home parks? This is the thing. I've had the opportunity to walk Orchard, the mobile home park on Valmont, and I have met a teacher and a social worker who live there. And through my conversation with them, they expressed to me that they're living there because they make too much money to be able to afford affordable housing and too little to pay market rate. So that means that we have a discrepancy in our own system and programs. Therefore, we have to work to provide affordable housing to middle-income people. And I support the current ballot initiative. I think it's very important that we take care of people here in Boulder. Currently, our market, we have people who can afford to pay the market rate, and also the city provide for people who want affordable housing. But middle-income people such as teachers and the people who provide safety services in our community don't have access to housing. And I think it's very important that we take care of these people.
Candidate Wallach.
With respect to mobile homes, I would encourage us to create more municipally owned mobile home facilities, because when we own the land, we can control the rents and we can protect vulnerable tenants from arbitrary evictions and targeted evictions. And I would use that same strategy to create more middle income and affordable housing generally. We have some underutilized real estate assets in this town, and I'm thinking particularly of our municipal airport that do not contribute that much to the town, but could be the location for, in the airport's case, over 1,000 units of middle income and affordable housing. And I specifically focus on the middle income because nobody is building that product today. And we can make that happen because we own the land. That's the key distinction, and that's why I want to take some of those assets and turn them into middle income and affordable houses.
Candidate Duran.
Ms. Josephine, can you repeat the question? I want to make sure I'm answering it.
Okay. This is the follow-up to the density question. We have some mobile home parks and Section 8 housing for low-income people. Who is responsible for coordinating the home parks in Section 8? Secondly, what do you think City Council can do to address our affordable housing crisis?
Okay, thank you. So in respect to the first question, there can be a variety of entities or individuals responsible for Section 8 housing. They can be nonprofit organizations, like the homeless shelter can be responsible for Section 8 housing vouchers that get distributed as a part of the Housing First program, or individuals can be responsible for carrying, or owners of the property can be responsible for carrying Section 8 responsibilities, and again, those vouchers. So what I think the city can be doing as it relates to Section 8 housing and other middle-income housing opportunities is to consider an aspect of what Mark Wallach here was just mentioning, but I would look at it from the community land trust side. I think there's an opportunity to utilize community land trust as an instrument for acquiring land that can be under city ownership to maintain a middle-income housing opportunity for folks. Thank you.
Candidate Buchla.
When we talk about mobile homes, we know that it's probably one of the least resources that we still have for affordable housing here. A lot of the population in Section 8 and also in the mobile home parks are the biggest minority here in Boulder, which is the Latino population. I think one of the things that the city can do is purchase these mobile home parks from the owners, like La Ponderosa, or I know that it's owned by a person that lives in California. I think the city should try to pursue to buy the land. Once we own the land, we can manage to actually preserve this. One of the last resources that we have, I mean, the Section 8 house does a great job allowing single moms or people that have mental problems to be, to pay $400 a month for rent and then, be able to save or study. It's a great program, but I think the city should put more into this, especially mobile home parks for the Latino community. Thank you very much.
Candidate Yates.
There's really three questions there. Who manages Section 8 vouchers? Most of our Section 8 vouchers are managed by Boulder Housing Partners, on whose board I sit with Nikki McCord. And Boulder receives a disproportionate share of Section 8 vouchers. We do a very good job, hundreds and hundreds of them. Second, our mobile home parks. We have 5 mobile home parks. Some of them are very, very well run and clean. One of them, which is not, is the Ponderosa Mobile Home Park, which Karina just referred to. Earlier this year, the city purchased that, and we'll be annexing it later this month so we can make that park a clean and safe place for its residents. Finally, with respect to solutions for affordability, I'm very proud of ballot measure 2I, which will be on your ballot this fall. I encourage you to vote in favor of it. It's a ballot measure that I prepared and worked on over the last 3 years with my city council colleague, Sam Weaver. It's a down payment middle income assistance program allowing families, middle income families who already work here in Boulder but can't afford to live here, to purchase their first homes here in Boulder with the aid of the city. I encourage you to vote in favor of ballot measure 2I. Thank you.
Candidate Swetlik.
I would also say yes on 2I, and I'll just get that in there right away. I think it's just incredibly important that development start paying its way when it comes to developing more buildings in town. So right now, as I was referring to in the previous answer, only 25% of new buildings need to be permanently affordable units for housing. So in my mind, that percentage needs to be increased. That's something that City Council can do. We also need to start putting head taxes on the largest corporations that bring the biggest impacts on the town, traffic noise, raising of housing prices, so that we can actually balance the equation a little bit. And until we do, we're just going to continue to see a proliferation of really, really big tech companies coming here to attract top talent at the expense of people who are living here now. So I think that is incredibly important that we reverse that trend and keep moving towards more equity here in Boulder.
Candidate Brockett.
So 1 minute is a very short time to answer all of that. On affordable housing, I'll echo my colleagues here to support ballot measure 2I. I'm going to focus on the other couple things. So mobile home parks are an incredibly important reservoir of market rate affordable housing in our community. And I'm proud that the City Council of Boulder over decades has worked hard to preserve those mobile home parks in town, make sure that they're not changed into more expensive housing, and to also support the residents, because there's a power differential, because the park owners control the land, and then the mobile home park residents own their mobile home park, own their own mobile home. But they're often at the whims of the mobile home park owners and can be mistreated. So the city has a long history of supporting those residents in those battles. And I'm happy to say that just this last year, our State Representative Edie Hooten got some legislation passed at the state level to increase protection for mobile home park residents. The city has supported her in those efforts and will be implementing those rules this year to continue to maintain that as an affordable place for folks to live.
Candidate Solani.
Thank you. I think there are 3 questions in that group of questions. And as far as the vouchers are concerned, I do believe BCH does a very good job in dealing with that. It's a tricky gig. The overhead in this city, as we all know, is so high. I would like to look at the mobile home parks, and I think a lot of my colleagues here are very much on the same track with that. The acquisition of Ponderosa not only gives an opportunity to maintain a very affordable region for people, but hopefully we can also think outside of the box. When you look at a mobile home park, all the abodes are single story, and they're very inefficient. So to meet up with some of our climate goals over time, if we can grandfather in the expense of the people that are existing and living there and start assembling and building much more modern, much more efficient housing, we can maintain it as a city-owned entity.
Candidate McCord.
So I've been at the Housing Colorado Conference since Wednesday as part of my board service with BHP, so I wish I had more than a minute to answer this question. I have so much information for you guys. But in terms of mobile home parks, the city just passed the mobile home strategy, which will give mobile home residents the ability to purchase the mobile home park. Now, while I was at that conference, I met with people, with lenders who have money available to do this. So this is something that the city has done in the past to help protect mobile home park residents. In terms of Section 8, what the city has also done is passed an anti-discrimination law to make sure that landlords are not discriminating against people who are coming to them with Section 8 values. So as your city council person, you're going to want someone on city council who has the experience, who has worked with affordable housing for the past 6 years, who has the knowledge and who has the connection to talk about realistic solutions for solving our affordable housing goals and things that can actually be done.
Candidate Orba.
So, as a resident in Boulder, my rent increased 62% over a period of 6 years. Now, I don't feel like that's fair. It's much higher than inflation and normal wage increases. So my mind goes immediately to rent regulations, which is not currently legal at the municipal level. I ask the landlords to step up. I know the market is high, but if you don't need the money, please don't raise your rents that high. You don't have to be greedy just because the market lets you. I ask you to do what's right. I also am middle income, but I had to be so creative in Boulder in order to be middle income. I'm excited to hear what Nikki just had to say about the co-oping of a mobile home park. I truly believe in co-ops, and the people should be able to buy their own property and work together. I also believe that our 15% goal of affordable housing is a great one.
Thank you.
And thanks.
Candidate Cure.
Thank you, Josephine. Sorry. So I think the role of city council is always to protect and to empower those who are most in need. And obviously, the people who are living in mobile home parks feel very, very vulnerable as a result of their economic situation. And it is the role of council to support them. As this current council, this previous session, I just commend Bob and Aaron for the work that they've done in regards to empowering those people, and especially for Nikki with the work that she's done as well. I think, once again, the sense of common values for common ground can be sensed in, EFA, the work that they do, Boulder Housing Partners, Attention Homes. There are some incredible organizations in this town working on behalf of these communities, and it is the role also of council to get out of the way and to take the advice of others in our community who know those situations better than we at council do.
Thank you.
Candidate McIntyre.
So there are, I think, two success stories here. Ponderosa, I think, has the potential to be the Ponderosa Mobile Home Park that the city just purchased on the west side of Broadway, up north, has the potential to be a real success story where we can build permanently affordable housing for those residents and convert some infrastructure that is well beyond its useful life and have those people live more comfortably, and in better economic situation than they currently do in their mobile home park, which has experienced an incredible amount of neglect. The example of that, the success story that many people don't remember because now it's permanently affordable housing, is at Folsom and Valmont. That used to be a mobile home park. It is now a two-story permanently affordable housing, and again, we converted that without displacing the residents, and that's the model that we need to use going forward.
Candidate Dolan.
When you're on the back end of the questions, it's hard to come up with something new, but here we go. So similar to what Nikki said, I think the city needs to look at assisting mobile home users into finding ways that they can actually go to purchase their mobile home parks. It's a great way for us to help protect our lower income residents, but more importantly, it's going to make those areas permanently affordable so they actually won't ever be turned into different development. For affordability as well, I'd look at raising inclusionary housing from 25 to 35%. Increase cash in lieu, and then also look for partners so we can actually focus primarily on building affordable housing. And then I fully echo what Bob and Sam put forward with 2I. I think it's one of the best ways to move forward, and it's a new idea from where we were before.
Candidate Friend.
I agree, it's hard to be last. Agree with most of my colleagues here that we can't afford to lose existing affordable housing, so we need to do what we can to preserve the manufactured home parks that are in place. And concur with Benita and Bob. I think they gave a very solid answer on part one, so I won't reiterate that. And The second part of the question I understood to be, what can we do more broadly to have more affordable housing? So I'll just give one example. I would like to put an ADU in my backyard, and I contacted the city for that. I'd like to make it affordable. When you try to contact the city, you have to email them. You can't get a person on the phone. And then you learn that, you have to have a water hookup and an electric hookup, and you're maybe gonna have to move some sheds. So I would say that to get to yes on some of the affordable housing options that we already have or want to promote, we can do more as a city to do something like give microloans or make it easier for people who are trying to opt into providing those affordable home options. Thank you.
And we'll start the next question with candidate Wallach, and it is, as a city councilor, what solutions do you propose to the homeless problem?
If you think it's hard to go last. Well, there is no magic bullet with respect to the homeless problem. We are suffering from a national problem. But having said that, I fully support the work that's being done by organizations such as EFA, the Bridge House, the Homeless Shelter. I would look for opportunities to increase funding for those services because I think they're doing very, very important work for the community. I had the opportunity to speak to our district attorney about it, and he pointed out to me that at a state level, Colorado is one of the worst states in terms of funding programs for better mental health and addiction outcomes, and that is a large component of our homeless problem. So we have to work at the state level. We have to continue our support for programs at the local level, and we simply have to understand that what we are dealing with is a problem that is afflicting every community in the United States. Thank you.
Candidate Duran.
Thank you. I'm a past board member of Boulder Shelter for the Homeless, and in the 6 years that I served on that board, 3 years of it was spent in this very intense process that involved all the homeless serving organizations to figure out who was doing what best and how we could better collaborate to create this coordinated system that we have today. So we've seen it now in its first 2 seasons of operation, and the city, rightfully so, invested about another $2 million in this kind of program. And that's a significant investment. And so I believe that the data that we're getting out of this will help inform us to determine what additional changes need to be made in the program structure and the system that is helping to address homelessness with Housing First programs and other ancillary programs that Bridge House and others have done a beautiful job in creating opportunities for people in the system. Thank you.
Candidate Hukla.
Well, when we talk about this topic, it's like a nationwide problem. The homeless is always related with health problems, mental problems, economical problems, and of course, drug problems. I think the city is doing a great job with, the program Path to, what's the name of the program? Path to Home, the EFA for emergency housing, and all of this. But I think that as a council member, I want to keep helping the homeless population, but I will also want to take into consideration that Boulder Parks, Boulder Creeks, libraries, outside the libraries, it's always been meant to be a place for families and kids to enjoy that. And I want to be sure that that keeps into that direction. I'm here to support moms. As a mom, I'm really concerned about the NEEDL program. I think we have to be more careful. We have to find a way to relieve this danger that is now, I won't take my kids to the public library in the sandbox to play there. Thank you.
Candidate Yates.
A friend of mine asked me this question yesterday, so I have the answers right here. Let me tell you about 5 things that I shared with him that we actually do right now. First of all, the city supports the 2 service providers, Bridge House and the Boulder Shelter for the Homeless, which between them operate 210 beds. And on cold nights like we had earlier this week, that goes up to 282 beds. Those beds are never full. Number 2, we operate what's called a coordinated entry program to ensure that we're customizing the service that we do provide folks. And through that coordinated entry program, which started 2 years ago, we have helped 648 individuals exit homelessness, oftentimes being reunited with family and friends outside of Boulder. Third, through the Bridge House Ready to Work program, we provide job training in culinary arts and landscaping to 44 people at a time so that they can get first and last month's rent and have a resume. Fourth, we provide permanent supportive housing for the most able-bodied of our homeless folks. We have 100 units of that right now, and we plan to add another 100 units over the next 3 years. And fifth, through a program that city supports with EFA, we try to keep families from becoming homeless by providing subsidies for their mortgages and their rents when they find financial distress.
Candidate Sweatlick.
So I think it's really important just to start that there are different types of homelessness. There are people who are seeking long-term housing, and there are people who are not, who are kind of just traveling around and, like Boulder because it's a cool place to be. So they need different solutions, and they can't all be lumped into one. That's the first thing that we have to look at. I think it's incredibly important to keep people in their homes. So we do have a program that pays for, I think it's 3 months rent. Just if you're falling on hard times, and I want to continue and maybe even expand upon that program, because if people don't become unhoused, they actually are much healthier, much safer overall, and that is the best way to actually address the problem of homelessness, is to keep them housed. Second, I think we do need to provide more day sheltering for people so they have an option of a place to be rather than along the creek side, rather than, just in public spaces where they might get harassed for no reason. I think that's super, super important as well. Thank you.
Candidate Brockett.
So revising our homeless services has been a major focus of the last 4 years in City Council. So Bob did a great rundown of what we've accomplished there. This is a national problem. There's only so much we can do at the local level, but I want to highlight a couple of those that Bob mentioned. So one of those, the fundamental solution to homelessness is housing. And so for the folks who've been here a long time and been on the streets for a long time, we're trying to get them off the streets because it saves society money and it gives people a dignified existence. So we have been ramping up the number of permanent supportive housing units, which include wraparound services for mental health and substance abuse and financial counseling and other issues. So I'm proud of our efforts to increase those housing units. And the other thing is that the most important, the best thing you can do is keep people from becoming homeless in the first place. And we direct the most resources in that area to our families. So in coordination with EFA, we have the Keeping Families Housed program, which does provide that 3 months of rent stabilization. Again, key issue here is wraparound services, where people get the financial counseling and other sorts of resources that they need to stay happy and healthy.
Candidate McCord. Candidate Solani.
Thank you.
Thank you for keeping me honest.
Thank you, Josephine.
Sorry.
2 minutes?
I think our efforts with the homeless have been terrific, and that the City Council perhaps has got its greatest success in doing that. And Bob and Aaron have done great jobs with that. The coordinated entry has every appearance of being very successful over time. The societal expense of criminalizing homelessness is magnificent. So every time we put a homeless person in a jail, it's kind of a loss for everyone involved. We need to further housing for them. And I do also reflect on my experience at the library, that sometimes I get somewhat intimidated from going into the library, and instead of being able to avail myself of the existing services, I'm constantly reminded that it's really a place for the homeless to stay and live in. So we need to adjust that a little bit. But I think we're doing a very good job of it, and I very much will propose to keep that going if I get elected.
Now, Candidate McCord.
So as I stated previously, I've been at a housing conference since Wednesday, and one of the things that I learned is that we sometimes need to get outside of Boulder in order to understand how to have solutions. And I attended a session that I loved that was a formerly homeless individual was giving the session, and he talked a lot about housing first and how Housing Plus Services actually helps people get out of homelessness. Now, as a member of Boulder Housing Partners for the past 6 years, I do know that we have 1175 Lee Hill, which is a housing first solution, and through that housing development, It's been on operation for about 5 years, and although residents were resistant to it at first, I'm happy to report that in the last year, there were 0 calls to the police in terms of disruptions at that property. So I think that there are solutions to the homeless situation. I think that it's important for us to learn from other people outside of Boulder on how to solve these issues, and as a city council person, I'm willing to do that.
Candidate Orba.
So I'm really proud of Boulder for opening up the Attention Homes project. There will be 41 18 to 24-year-olds in transitional housing in a matter of weeks. I don't know exactly when they're opening, but yeah. This model has been copied from a national model. It's the 6th in the nation, and I'm really proud of us. I would like to see better sharps containers and collectors around the creek and in public bathrooms downtown. I also would like Boulder to consider opening a women and children-only shelter. Currently, we don't have one, and I don't think that's good enough. I am an advocate and I support the coordinated entry program, and I think we can do a little bit more for mental health and addiction services. Thank you.
Candidate Cure.
Thank you, Josephine. I think, once again, we need to remain teachable in regards to outside solutions to our common problems, in the sense of Nikki's experience in regards to going to these conferences, going to outside of our community and seeing what is working in other communities and taking those same initiatives. I think, once again, EFA, Boulder Housing Partners, all the work that's being done right now in Attention Homes and trying to get them into these 15-minute neighborhoods. So once again, the main solution to this problem is, as everyone has said, is getting them into shelters, right? Getting them into their own homes so that those main problems of criminalizing things such as mental health problems, drug addiction, financial instability, those are the programs that we as a city, and I commend this council for all the initiatives that they have done in order to basically find solutions to common problems.
Candidate McIntyre.
So I essentially concur with everyone up here, especially Bob for his education about what we're doing currently, and Aaron for the incredibly good work, for Nikki for pointing out the success of 1175 Lee Hill, which that was a battle, a royale to get that done. And now it's done, and it's serving our community, and it's serving our community without, really without controversy. And so when I talk about good governance, I want us to have measurable metrics, and our coordinated entry system has measurable metrics, and the latest report shows that it is a success. It is not perfect. It is not perfect. It does not solve the homeless problem as is perceived in total, but it is a success, and we have to live our values, and we have to be willing to adjust. So we have a coordinated entry program, and if we need to make adjustments, make tweaks, great, let's do it, but let's live our values.
Candidate Dolan.
So first, I think what we need to do is we need to have compassion for all parties involved. I mean, it's a difficult process. It's a difficult situation, clearly, on the homeless end especially. And everyone's already covered a lot of things. Bridge House is amazing. Attention Homes does a great job. Path to Home is great. But I think what we also need to do is we need to start looking at how we're treating addiction in our community as well. And the one thing that Karina kind of touched on was our current needle program. And currently, it's not a one-in, one-out situation. You can go and they can give you a handful of needles and they don't ask where the other ones were. They don't ask for anything else. And I've seen numbers where there are in the range of 200,000 needles that haven't been given back to our needle program. So we need to first make a one-for-one exchange program for our needles so we know where they're going, and it's a safety issue for people who are addicted. It's a safety issue for people who live here. So we need to readdress how that goes into our community, because that's one, as in the boy who poked himself recently, one child is too many for that situation.
Candidate Friend.
So again, grounding things in data and facts, the #1 predictor of adult homelessness is teen homelessness. So I also want to give a shout out to Attention Homes. They're going to do great things for our community, and we need to expand funding for that as needed. #2, I think we need to look more broadly at a regional and state approach, because there's a lot of concern about a magnet sort of drawing people to Boulder because our services are so great. So I think that if we can expand and you're getting the same services in Nederland as Denver, as Glenwood Springs, as Boulder, that's going to help alleviate that, and Boulder can continue to do great things, and other communities will need to follow, and we will need to follow the great things that other communities are doing as well. Coordinated entry is awesome. It's data-driven, so we want to continue with that, but I do believe we need to build in more compassion. The severe weather shelters should be open at warmer temperatures. 38 degrees when you're wet or 39 degrees when wet is too cold, and you can get hypothermia even at 55 degrees. So we need to follow the facts and the data and be compassionate. Thanks.
Candidate Joseph.
Thank you. I've had the opportunity to volunteer at the Boulder Shelter as a cook at 5 o'clock in the morning. And that experience, I've seen people who work in this community. So the homeless population is not just people who are on drugs or people who decide to, people with mental health issues. It's also people who work in this community. And I've actually met CU students who live in their car. So it's not just the broad array of people who are homeless is not just one group. It's not a monolith. So I think it's very important that we look into the regional coordinations, more funding for mental health as well. But I think it's very important. A lot of my colleagues have mentioned, the different ways we can go about solving homelessness issues. But the thing I want to leave you with is that when we think of homelessness, we have to think that until every person in the community is secured, we are not secured, because a homeless person can be any one of us. Thank you.
The next question, and we're going to start on the right and work this way, so you will again be last. Thank you very much. Okay. We're going to start with candidate McIntyre on a totally different subject. Do you support a municipal electric utility, and why or why not?
I used to support the Muni up until 2017, and I no longer do. And the reason is my commitment to greenhouse gas reduction supersedes our desire to have a municipal utility. The original goal was to do our part in mitigating climate change, and we do that by reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. The Muni has become a project about owning poles and wires, about the means of distribution rather than the means of renewable energy production. It has taken 9 years, millions of dollars, depending upon who you talk to, between $15 and $20 million, and an incredible amount of talented staff time, and we are still years and years away. My vote would be to end the Muni process and to get behind real greenhouse gas reduction and renewable energy production.
Candidate Cure.
Thank you, Josephine. $22 million over 9 years is a lot of money and a lot of time. I commend the initiative of municipalization for what it did in regards to pushing this conversation forward to get Excel especially on board and to get some education around us as a community of what we are looking for. I do not support us putting our financial or our community in financial peril as a result of going after this goal. I feel like the goal of working together, the common value, as Mark has just said, of getting renewable energy is something that can be achieved by working together rather than an antagonistic, very expensive divorce process that has no timeline in regards to finding solutions.
Candidate Orba.
I am pro the municipalization effort. I do believe that it has been proven in other municipalities that when a city owns their own electric, they do reduce carbon emissions, and so I trust that data. Now, why is it taking this long? That is where I go. I met with a few different people about this topic, and it could be a personnel issue. I would like to see a condemnation expert in town, and I truly believe that we can work smarter and not harder, and I'm pretty darn good at figuring out the issues to the problem, the heart of the problem, and I'd like to do that with this issue. Thank you.
Candidate McCord.
So I support a diversity of solutions to reach our climate goals, and I think that the city is on its way of doing that and creating this Citizens Advisory Panel on climate change. Now, I can say that because of my experience. So when I was a lobbyist for the Department of Environmental Quality in the state of Michigan, our director worked to limit the number of permits for coal-fired power plants while also advocating for renewable sources like solar and wind. Now, when I worked for industry and when I was a lobbyist for Fortune 500 companies, I lobbied on behalf of those companies to make sure that after the renewable portfolio standard was passed in Michigan, that our low-income residents were not going to be negatively impacted by the increase of rates to reach our renewable goals. So my focus is always on the folks who are not at the table, the folks who are going to be bearing the brunt of these increases, and making sure that we're protecting those individuals while also reaching our climate goals.
Candidate Solani.
Thank you. 9 years into the Muni is a very, very long time to get to the spot that we're at. I support one more vote to see if the people want to go through with this, and I will rely on the vote of the people to determine my interest in it. I have begun to waver on its support merely because so little has gotten done for so much.
Candidate Brockett.
So climate change is the existential threat of our time. And in order to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions to levels that keep the planet from overheating to an unacceptable level, we need 100% renewable electricity. And currently, the only path to getting 100% renewables in our town is the municipal utility, which is why I continue to support it. But that being said, fundamentally, I view the City Council as stewards of this effort at this point. In 2017, the voters did pass a measure to continue funding for the exploration of the city utility. And so our job on City Council is to make sure that we figure out all the numbers and all the details of what it would look like, and then put it back on the ballot, and the final decision will be up to you, the Boulder citizens. Thank you.
Candidate Sweatlet.
So I supported the Muni 2 years ago, and I continue to support it today. And for a reason that not everybody else does, I don't think that a for-profit company should determine our future when it comes to fighting climate change. I don't believe that they have our best interests in mind, because they have taxpayers' interests in, stakeholders' interests in mind first. And in my mind, that's never going to create a system where we actually reach our energy goals. So even if it is a costly expense for us, I believe the people should have the means of energy production, to be honest with you, and that it shouldn't be in the hands of people who are looking for profits first. Also, there's added benefits, like we actually get to have broadband citywide in our community if we have municipalization. It's so much easier. Longmont and Fort Collins have both done it. They also have much higher levels of service than Excel currently provides. So there's so many benefits, including the future of our planet.
Candidate Yates.
The answer is no. I've always opposed municipalization. While climate change is an existential threat, I do not believe that municipalization is the solution. I know many of you in the room have supported this along the way, and I respect those decisions you've made. But I think recent developments since the last vote in 2017 have indicated that while this may have seemed like a good idea at the time, it no longer is a good idea. Our state legislature has significantly increased the requirements for use of renewable energy, and Xcel Energy itself has stepped up in its use of renewables and has a plan to get us to 100% renewables. So I believe that that this endeavor, whether it was a good idea to start with or not, is one that has reached the end of its life. Remember, the goal here was to do this and then have other cities follow us and replicate that and follow by example. But you know what? If no one follows you, you are not a leader. No one has endeavored to try municipalization since we started this nearly a decade ago. So I'm in favor of putting it back to the people for a vote to determine whether you seriously still want to go forward. Thank you.
Candidate Hukla.
So when we talk about municipalization, the first thing that comes to my mind is, the global crisis, climate that, we're facing. And I think, for me, one of the top things is fracking. I'm anti-fracking. But I think that if we can manage that right now, the fracking. The municipalization, it's a great program. It's admirable, and it's very ambitious. And I salute all the people that are supporting this. Of course, I mean, creating and be sure that we want to be 100% renewable energy by 2030. It's our goal, and I think the municipalization, we are in track. I think we got a good news a couple days ago that, Boulder is going to be now, I mean, it's great news for Boulder. We're going to be entitled to own this. And I think these millions of dollars that Excel is making, we can use it. So, thank you.
Candidate Duran.
Thank you. I support and voted in favor of municipalization since the first vote that was taken in our city. I want to enhance and support what I've heard Councilman Aaron Brockett relate to today. I 100% support the position that he has articulated and agree that the council has been great stewards of this process over time. I think what matters is the way that we talk about climate change, and I'm going to give a shout out to an author and a professor that many of you may know, Max Boykoff, who's a CU environmental professor. He just authored a book called Creative Climate Conversations, and what he says in here is about the way that we talk about climate change does matter, and it impacts us on so many levels in all walks of life. And the areas that I want to focus in on are the issues of transparency and education. So as we lead to a vote that hopefully happens in 2020, I want to see that we have a more transparent process and that we engage people at a grassroots level in the conversations, and particularly that we communicate in English and Spanish about our issues related to the environment.
Candidate Wallach.
There are two reasons I support the Muni. The first is substantive. Colorado still gets 54% of its energy, total energy, from coal. And I think going to the Muni will be the most consequential action we can take towards meeting our 2030 environmental goals. Excel has promised to get us to a renewable future by 2050. And that, to me, is merely a promise. And if it doesn't work out for them, we will be in the same place as we are when we try to ride our mythical RTD light rail station to Denver. The second reason is procedural. We have voted for the Muni. The people have voted for the Muni, and I think what they have said is continue the process, let's get to the number, and put that number in front of us for our decision. I think the people have the right to get to that stage, and I want to let them make a common sense judgment on that issue.
Candidate Joseph.
Thank you. We all agree that there is a climate crisis. But I'm running on socioeconomic diversity and political inclusion, and I always go back to those values when it comes to municipalization. I believe Muni is about political participation. The people have voted for it, and it deserved to be on the ballot, and I will support it because of that. But I think another aspect of Muni is the fact that, for instance, once we've municipalized, the people will have the opportunity to decide whether rate goes up and how a lot of the energy programs are done. I have had the opportunity to speak with Excel. I've spoken with the representative. He told me that he's working on municipalization. And I agree with Adam that it's true that Excel as an institution care probably more about its shareholder than about the people of Boulder. And I think municipalization will allow the people to have a voice within the process. Thank you.
Candidate Friend.
Thanks. So I personally voted for the Muni last time it was up. What I like about it is it gets us to 100% renewable energy, sort of with an asterisk. Apparently, we don't have the technology right now for anywhere to be 100% renewable. So for us to get to 100% renewable, it's probable that the cities around us have to up their use of fossil fuels. So that's a little bit a plus and a minus. I love the local control aspect of the municipalization. However, things have shifted in the last 2 years. So Excel and the state have upped their targets, and the cost has escalated dramatically. So at this point, your question was, do you support municipal electric utility? And I don't know how any of us can honestly answer that question when we are in a fact-finding mode right now. We don't know what it's going to cost. It could be anywhere from $200 million to close to $1 billion, and we can't bankrupt the city to get municipalization, in my opinion. So I think that this is a litmus test that is difficult to answer at this point because we do not have the facts.
Candidate Dolan.
So first, I want to congratulate the city staff for their hard-fought victory that just came through on Thursday. And with the municipalization, the citizens have voted for it twice, so I fully support putting it to a vote for the third time once we actually find the final cost. I personally support the muni, and there's a few reasons I do that. If we stay with Excel, they're not going to get us to our renewable energy goals in a fair amount of time. I've seen numbers that in 2027, where we have a goal as a city to, by 2030, be fully renewable, they'll still be getting 46% of our energy needs from coal and gas, and that doesn't work for what we're in the current situation with climate crisis we're going right now. And also, based on numbers I've seen, as a community, we can save between $20 and $35 million from buying our energy from somewhere else. But similar to what Rachel said, if the cost is too high, this may not make sense. So we need to see what the cost of the assets are. That's why I support putting it to a vote. And the nice thing is that Boulder's not putting all their eggs in one basket. There's a climate initiative team that works hard, and they have other aspects and other scenarios they're playing out. And so we're still moving in the right direction. Thank you.
And then the next question is going to start with candidate Cure, and we're going to go with, because we're going to try and fit as much in, we're going to go with 45 seconds. And then we'll switch around a little bit, just to make sure you guys are able to keep
shortened.
track. All right. This is
Yeah, little words.
this is an interesting question. Do you believe that the 60,000 commuters into Boulder every day would be better served by clean light rail instead of more affordable housing? Is it a trade-off?
Thank you, Josephine. Well, in the best of both worlds, there's both, right? So there are 64,000 in commuters coming into a town of 108,000. So that's going to create some traffic issues. That's going to create some plausibility of actually having those things taken care of. I do find, though, that there is a reality check and a cold shower of what we can offer as a city in regards to housing is not amenable a lot of the times to what the price point is in Erie, Lafayette, Longmont, Broomfield. So I think we're all waiting for a train, as Mark had said, that is not in any way, shape, or form about to leave the station. So I think the best part about that is to try to get the opportunity zone, because that is along a transportation corridor, and that is a solution to that problem.
Candidate Orba, sorry.
I would like to prioritize affordable housing for city workers. I think we can do a better job of taking care of our municipal workers, and I don't feel like they should have to commute. Thanks.
Candidate McCord. Do you believe that the 60,000 commuters into Boulder every day would be better served by clean light rail instead of more affordable housing? Is it a trade-off?
So as a person who's worked on multiple levels of government, I want to let you all know that we have no control over RTD. So we need to make sure that we are repairing relationships and strengthening relationships with RTD to get the things that we want. Now, what we do have control over is something like microtransit. And so if the city wants to think about microtransit issues, that's something that I am in favor of and will advocate for. But I want us to get away from thinking that we have the ability to tell RTD what to do, because we don't. So let's find out some solutions that are within our toolbox that we can realistically get to, and let's focus on that and not want RTD to do something that they won't do. And let's strengthen our relationships with RTD as well. Thank you.
Candidate Solani.
Can you reiterate that question? I'm sorry.
Do you believe that the 60,000 commuters into Boulder every day would be better served by clean light rail instead of more affordable housing? Is it a trade-off?
Well, since they don't live here, I would say they would be better served by light rail, of course. It isn't the thing that I wake up in the morning thinking about putting 60,000 more people into the city, because their commute is a difficult one. I did meet with Mayor Bagley in Longmont. He's been a leader in trying to get RTD to do some of the things that in a way they guaranteed us when we started paying taxes to them in 2004. So we're still being taxed big for RTD, and they haven't delivered a thing. I think we need to get together with Jared Polis, our governor. I think he has a vested interest in making transportation into and out of our city work a lot better. That's an infrastructure we need to improve.
Candidate Brockett.
Well, I will say it's not a trade-off, but I'm going to focus on the transportation side. We need much better mass transit. And so for the last 4 years, I've been serving the city as the representative to the Denver Regional Council of Governments. So twice a month, I take the bus down to Denver and work with elected officials across the region on our transportation issues. And I'm happy to say that we've secured the first state funding for the first stages of bus rapid transit along Highway 119 to Longmont and also on State Highway 7 East along Arapahoe. And we're also working with RTD to get the first phases of that long-promised train done, hopefully some peak hour service that we can implement more quickly than the full service. So mass transit is a huge piece of this problem.
Candidate Swetlik.
So I also don't think these two things are mutually exclusive. I think a majority of our housing issues are actually mass transit issues. And this is what happens when you put your trust in a corporation. So it's just like the Muni. If we start poking and prodding and thinking about doing something as an alternative, best case, we're going to find a better alternative that we control. Worst case, we're going to make them and push them in the right direction. And I think RTD needs a wake-up call at this point because the services aren't getting any better, but the costs are only going up. And we're still paying for a train that I think I'll be older than Bob when it's going to happen. So
That's pretty old.
Candidate Yates.
Well, 60,000 people kind of come in more or less at the same time in the morning and leave more or less at the same time in the evening. That would be a really, really big train, I think. And they don't all live in the same place. Some live northeast, some live east, some live southeast, some come down the mountain. So I think it would probably be unrealistic for us to think that the train is going to be magically the solution to all of our transportation problems. So I agree with my predecessors to my left. This is a combination of various transit systems, bus, increasing our housing opportunities, regionally focusing on housing with our suburban partners to the north and east and south, and eventually someday getting a train. That would be nice, that'd be cool, that'd be nostalgic, but it won't solve all of our problems.
Candidate Hukla.
So do we really think that 60,000 people that commuting here to work here want to stay to live in Boulder when they probably have a bigger place with yards and all that outside of Boulder? I mean, I found that like a fantasy. What we need to do is like offering a better mass transportation for these people that come into Boulder. How? Yeah, the train is great. We met with the mayor of Longmont, who was making a great effort. I think we have to partner with the cities around, but this is going to be, we have to look forward to that. It's not going to be right now. So what we can do right now is improve the massive bus system that RTD is not delivering. Besides that, they own us more than $200 million.
Candidate Duran.
So to take that up to a different line, I do support a county, our own regional transportation system, and I appreciate the work that through the Transportation Advisory Board and other entities that have partnered with the City of Boulder to look at those alternatives. I think that is, it's ripe for that pursuit, because we have had this experience with RTD that has not benefited us as taxpayers. And so with that in mind, I really hope that we can emphasize movement in that direction. So I would say that a light rail is, in theory, a nice idea, expensive. I'd like to explore shuttle busing in, folks, but I think we need to recognize that when people come into Boulder, they may not be stopping just at one place to work. Thank you.
Candidate Wallach.
I have to correct my friend Adam. The standard of reference is that you will be older than me when you first. And no, I don't think there's a trade-off on that. One is obviously an RTD responsibility using our tax funds, which frankly they have stiffed us on. And the other is a local responsibility to create more housing opportunity. But I say that in the context that we will never house 60,000 in commuters. It's not an either-or situation. What we want to do is create more opportunity for more people to affordably live in Boulder, but we have to realize that we can never accommodate that entire stream of in-commuters on a daily basis.
Candidate Joseph.
I have lived around the world. I've lived in Europe, lived in Switzerland, and I've lived in Germany. I've seen how transportation is done. Do we have an issue with transportation in Boulder? Yes, because we have over 60,000 people commuting in every day. We can definitely do better. I don't think it's a trade-off. I think we can do both. Provide affordable housing to the people who want to live here, and also provide transportation to the ones that are commuting, because our climate deserves it. We need to protect the people of the future, and I think as well we have to work in coordination with the other regional partners to ensure that we provide the type of transportation that will protect our climate and ensure that people get to have the opportunity to live in their community while they commute and to work here in Boulder. Thank you.
Candidate friend.
So your question was, are 60,000 commuters better served by clean light rail instead of housing? And my answer is no. There is a climate crisis issue that we filter this through, and that also points towards having people live near where they work. But there's also a social justice issue here. So I'm going to talk about teachers because I am a teacher, and my sister teaches in Boulder at Casey. She was able to buy a house here in the 90s. New teachers cannot. So that means that they're putting their own kids in daycare to come and teach ours. And even if we give them a light rail to get here, they're going to have to take a light rail to the stop where the daycare is, and then they're going to have to take the light rail to their house, and they're going to keep doing 2 extra hours. And I don't think it's fair to have sort of a master servant class in Boulder where we're asking people to commute that many hours and sacrifice their own families for our benefit.
Candidate Dolan.
So as I believe Adam said, it's not a mutually exclusive question, but just to address it as it is, we don't have the space for 60,000 people to move here. And even if we magically came up with it, we'd have 60,000 new commuters to take care of services for the 60,000 new residents. So it doesn't really answer the question. But in terms of light rail, it's not the magic bullet either, but I think that we need to find ways to make it happen because it's one of the tools in our toolbox. But I've also been looking at doing shuttle systems kind of similar to what NCAR does, where people park on the outskirts of town and they go to 4 or 5 major job hubs throughout the town. So then that can help decrease that. So I think there's a lot of new tools that we can put forth, but we need to kind of start being creative with what we're doing.
Candidate McIntyre.
So I currently serve on the Transportation Advisory Board, and as such, I did a study. I went out and I looked at Arapahoe and Baseline and the Diagonal, and I can tell you a lot of people drive in every morning in a single occupancy vehicle. It's readily apparent. So we have these known traffic corridors, and what I want to see us do is twofold. One, build on the success of bus rapid transit, and Aaron mentioned new funding for bus rapid transit on 119. The second thing is for the city to take control in a greater way of our transportation destiny, and the HOP is an example of that. That's not an RTD product. That's run by the city with VIA. So we can actually make some real improvements in our transportation.
The next question is going to be a yes or no answer, and we'll start with candidate Orba. This is a state. If you are not committed or are committed to the campaign finance limit of $20,700 that those taking campaign matching funds are. Does that make sense? No. Okay, that's kind of a, okay. Are you committed to the campaign finance limit of $20,700?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry. I thought I counted right.
Yes.
Does that help everybody
See how
make a
fast
decision?
See how fast we can move when we're.
Yeah.
Thank you all. The next one is another interesting question. Though council does not, and we're going to start with McCord. Okay? Just want to make sure. With candidate McCord. Though council does not oversee city staff, council does oversee city manager. How can council assist in facilitating a successful resolution to low staff morale as identified in the daily camera?
Well, I am a facilitator who actually works with board of directors on how to be better board directors. And one of that is to make sure that we are uplifting and giving our city manager and our staff actionable goals and giving them the ability to do the work that they're best able to do. So I have a lot of experience in this. I believe that and I've also been a former state employee, so I know what it feels like for people not to value my work, and I value our city employees. So I want to make sure that I'm a city council person who is inspiring them to do the work that they are great at doing and not wavering or changing direction all of the time so that they have clear and actionable goals to get to. Thank you.
Candidate Solani.
Would you ask me that question again? I'm sorry. Thank you.
Though council does not oversee city staff, council does oversee city manager. How can council assist in facilitating a successful resolution to the low staff morale as identified in the daily camera?
Well, we have a huge staff for the amount of people that live in this town. So we have a very unusual dynamic therein, and keeping all of our staff happy, whereas it's a nice byproduct of good governance. I don't think it's an objective of good governance. And I think that our council really needs to solidify the issues that they want to deal with. We look at so many issues every year here that there's no way to get to them all successfully. So I think the council needs to sharpen that, and I also think our city manager has to have a position where she doesn't have her own agenda.
Candidate Brockett.
So I think part of the issue is that council gives staff too many things to do. This month, we have special meeting after special meeting after special meeting as we have this incredibly packed agenda. Next year, if I'm reelected, I intend to work towards a more focused set of goals so that staff isn't exhausted all the time. But also, I think we need to support our staff. They're world class. I tell you, the people we have working for the city of Boulder are as good as it gets. But I've seen times in the last couple of years where folks on city council have not just disagreed with staff, which is entirely normal and part of the process, but really sharply criticized them just for doing their jobs. So I think we need to set up with a more collaborative relationship with our city staff so that we can accomplish a strong set of goals, but that's small enough that we can really get them done well.
Candidate Sweatlick.
So I think the root of this issue is in our engagement process. Currently, we have things like sub-community planning that are sort of not happening quickly enough, so it just doesn't give residents of Boulder enough sort of advance notice of what's coming down and what could be affecting them. And in that case, then they kind of come towards the end of any given project, and they're not pleased because they weren't involved early on in the process. So it's a matter of changing our engagement process, making sure that stakeholders around the community are aware of what's going on right from the beginning. And that way, you know, they won't hold the staff in such a negative view, and staff won't feel like they're not part of the community. And I think that's going to really change everything overall in how we function as a community.
Candidate Yates.
I have to say that probably the most frustrating thing that I've experienced over the 4 years that I've served on city council is a lack of discipline by city council to stick to the plan. And I'm excluding Aaron from the comment I'm about to make. The way it's supposed to work is every January, we're supposed to have a council retreat, and we lay out the work plan for the coming year. Next year, it'll be January 17th and 18th. You're all invited. I hope I'm there. And then we're supposed to do that. That's what we're supposed to do. It's a negotiation between us and the staff. And except true emergencies, we're supposed to stick to that plan. Well, we do a horrible, horrible job. Every time a bright, shiny object comes along, we go off and chase that and go off and chase that. It drives the community crazy, it exhausts council, and it really exhausts staff. And we need to cut that out. We need to stick to our plan so you know what we're doing and that we know what we're doing and staff can support us.
Candidate Hukla.
I think there should be a really good connection between city council and city staff. I think one of the examples of the disconnection was the Opportunity Zone program. It was brought without the knowledge of council. And then we have now, it's going to change Boulder completely from 28th to 55th Street, you know, not only housing, but also small businesses. I salute also the good job of the city council members. And since, you know, we hire personnel to work for Boulder, like city management, we should ensure that they are working for the people, not for other interests.
Candidate Duran.
So I focus on two areas here. One, coming from the perspective of being a city employee in the city of Boulder, and then working with city managers throughout the country in the work that I've done. What makes for healthy relationships is clear communication and accountability. And I think of our city council as a board of directors. And not only is it the city manager, but it's also a city attorney and the municipal court judge that this body hires and is responsible for overseeing their work. And so one of the key issues for success in an organization is full evaluation of the hires of this body, and a commitment to focus on improvements in areas where are prioritized in the communication flow and the accountability of these appointed officials.
Candidate Wallach.
If I had one suggestion for council, it would be to do less and think more. And I think that will contribute to a greater sense of direction and make life a lot easier for staff. Of course, it is always appropriate to treat professionals and everyone respectfully, and I certainly support that. But I do want to point out that we live in a representative democracy, and there are times when there is a change of direction because council hears voices in the community that they have not previously heard. And when that happens, and there is a change in policy, there has to be some understanding that this is what government does when it is listening to people.
Candidate Joseph.
I have had the opportunity to go down to the city and meet with the budget manager. And one of the first questions I asked her, what can I do as a city council person or a person who aspired to be on city council? She said, learn how the budget works and how to prioritize, because that also is very important. But again, I want to say that in every system, whether it's government or whether it's even within your family, there will be disagreements, but it's how we manage those disagreements. I think it's very important that we keep the communication lines open and also do outreach. As someone who have worked within the United Nations system in Central African Republic, I've worked where there were armed groups with different interests. And part of my work, I had to do mediation to ensure that these different groups get to work with each other. So I believe I can definitely work with City Council. Thank you.
Candidate Friend.
I'm an attorney, and I'm going to disagree with the premise of the question a little bit. The premise is that council does not oversee or direct city staff, but for any of us who've come to meetings, we know that staff sit over here and say, we would like your clarification and direction on this project. And so city council gives direct instructions to staff on what steps to take. And the project that I know best is CU South, and I have watched city council from this dais just have staff chasing their tail again and again and again. So it's not just that they're getting instructions that they don't like from the city manager. It's coming directly from here. Sometimes they are berating staff from here. They will question facts to the point of, I would say, nearing gaslighting to staff. We have been bleeding staff on that particular project, and half staff say, I'll come back if I don't have to do that. So city council can set the tone and can be transparent and direct.
So I agree with that. City council needs to set the tone because staff is being pulled in too many directions and they're not sure what to do, and they don't know what their actual overall goals are because it changes so frequently. Like Aaron said, we have an exceptional staff in Boulder, and we need to allow them to do their jobs without micromanagement. And on a side note, I think we probably could have come to those conclusions without spending $217,000.
Candidate McIntyre.
4 things. First, honor our stated goals and eliminate ad hoc actions. Second, agree on data and facts. Third, make no request of staff lightly. The current council majority will request data, will request all sorts of things, and it's soon, within a minute, forgotten and never followed up on, not by staff, but by the councilor. Fourth, value work.
Candidate Cure.
Thank you, Josephine. So what the Tipton report, I think, really highlighted is that we've got 1,400 city staff who feel disenfranchised, and this was a problem that the city of Denver had. and that Mayor Hancock addressed directly, and this is a program which I feel that the City of Boulder should do as well, which is the Peak Academy. So Peak Academy was an initiative by Mayor Hancock to go to city staff and say, you know what, you know better than we as to what you feel are best practices so that we can empower you and you feel empowered that you know what to do. So I think that is a practical solution to this problem of trying to get people on the same page in regards to that.
Candidate Orba.
Donuts. I'm a teacher, and as a teacher, you learn how to work backwards. You learn backwards design lesson planning. You work with the goal in mind, and you keep your classroom on the priorities. You put the objectives on the board so they know what they're looking at. You don't let them get caught in the weeds. You keep everybody on track. You focus on those goals. And I am great at it. I vow to stay on track and keep us to the schedule that Bob has mentioned a few times. I would love to show you what I can do in that department. I have a bird's eye view, and I will keep us to our priorities. Thank you.
Now, this will be our last question, and we will start with candidate Solani. And it's a two-part question.
Great.
No, we're cutting it to 5 now. No. Thank you all for being so patient. 1 minute to answer this question, and it says, how do you intend to listen to the public in a productive way? And please provide one or more specific suggestions on how to enhance public engagement.
That's a great question. I think that everybody on this potential council sitting here needs to listen to the people. And we've had all sorts of questions about how do you engage with the various special interest groups that we see all the time and with the neighborhoods. I think neighborhood meetings have to be attended, and I think that's the basis of it all. And I think you just have to be very, very available and receptive to the interests of others.
Candidate Brockett.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So, I mean, it's so important to have good community engagement, of course. And, you know, we have a lot of people who show up to council chambers on one issue or another and who are often the most heavily engaged folks in our community, and their voices matter a lot, and we always listen closely to them before making a decision. I think it's critically important that we do everything that we can to get input from the entire community and do really broad outreach. So in the last couple of years, there's been an open space master plan that was passed, and we did this extremely high level of engagement in the community, including micro engagements, going to where people are at shopping centers or daycares or places where people are just living their daily lives. And one of the highlights of that was really working on reaching underserved communities, historically underserved, so folks who are Spanish speaking and young people, for example. And as part of those efforts, I was part of a chat with council just last weekend. Mary Young and I went to Sacred Heart of Jesus Church school and held a conversation in Spanish with folks right before they went to Mass and heard from people who don't normally come to city council meetings. I think it's incredibly important to make sure that we hear from all voices in the community. Thank you.
Candidate Sweatlick.
So this is a great question. On the Housing Advisory Board, where I've served the last 2 years, I've been one of 2 members of our only standing committee, the Engagement Committee. And we have actually developed a new type of engagement called a listening session, where we invite people from particular parts of the community that are generally underheard to come and tell us about their experience living here in Boulder. The first one we did was for the permanently affordable housing residents, because none of us on the board were permanently affordable housing residents. And we also got permanently affordable housing developers out to speak to us about what they do to build permanently affordable housing. So what we learned in a lot of those cases is things we wouldn't have known, like when you unbundle people's rents from their services, it looks like the rents are cheap, but actually they aren't, because they don't have services like storage or parking. So you learn so much more when you specifically ask people to come out and tell you about their experiences. And that's something that I would like to bring to council as well, is bringing the people out to us.
Candidate Yates.
Thank you so much to whoever asked this question. This is actually what I ran on 4 years ago, is better council engagement. We receive about 10,000 emails per year from constituents, and I try to answer, I read every one of them, and I try to answer as many of them as I can. After I got elected, I started a monthly newsletter to let folks know where I was coming, where council was going, and why I voted the way I did, and 4,000 of you in our community subscribed to that monthly newsletter. I started the chats with council that Aaron talked about a year and a half ago to get council members out in the community and having open dialogue without time limits with you all. And then I started last year a moving version of Chats with Council, which is walks with council, so you could take walks with us and have dialogues. And finally, shortly after I was elected, I rented an office at my own expense here downtown so that folks could come and speak, because the city didn't provide us offices, to speak with me. And I meet with between 15 and 20 constituents a week, each and every week. I never turn down a request for a meeting. So I am open, I'm accessible, and I want us to continue to be so.
Candidate Hukla.
I think one of the things that we can do can be sub-community plans, so we can ensure that kind of each neighborhood is represented. It is really hard, actually, to bring people to city council meetings, and it's really hard to get people participation. In several council meetings that I've been there, I've seen the same faces over and over again. So there's a lot of citizens that are very involved, but most of them are not. This is a reality. So we have to work through that. I think online participation will be awesome, like if people can just sign up for a city council meeting online. Another thing that we can do is, these city meetings are too long. I mean, it's hard for the city councils and from the public who wants to stay till after midnight. I mean, things like that. I think we have to target enough. At the end, I want to say that since I'm in the Women League of Voters, there's a lot of voices that are not heard. The minority community here in Boulder is the Latino. Most of them are not going to be able to vote because they can't. They don't have the right to vote. And I think we have to represent those voices here. Thank you.
Candidate Duran.
Thank you. A big part of my agenda is community and community building, engagement, participation. I believe in meeting people where they are, and so I would want to have initiatives that do go out to meet with people in communities where people are comfortable, because 1777 Broadway isn't always the most convenient or comfortable place for people. I believe in traveling meetings. I believe that this council body could be out in community doing sessions, doing meetings, conducting business in community. I believe in support bilingual meetings and that opportunity for different voices, literally, to be heard. I believe that we could be doing public meetings differently. For example, making sure that we end by 10:30 at night. I believe that we should engage seniors in a very distinct way, with earlier public engagement opportunities, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or we have an input session that happens in the morning sometimes. I believe in issues of being out in community with folks at playgrounds, parks, on trails. I like the walk with a candidate and walking with a council member as well. So, thank you.
Candidate Wallach.
That is an excellent question, but first I want to confirm Bob's engagement. He emailed me at 2:30 last night, and I assure you I wasn't awake for that. We need to have more informal forums for engagement. We need to be out of this room and into other rooms in public forums and neighborhood settings, and we need to do it earlier. A lot of our public engagement seems to occur as we are nearing decision on issues, and you end up with a lot of panic and hasty last-minute formation of groups for or against a particular issue. We need to interact with the communities at a much earlier stage if we want to have a satisfactory engagement process. And so I would look for more opportunities to do it earlier, do it out of this room, and look for those opportunities to begin the conversation on issues when the conversation should begin, at the beginning, not at the end.
Candidate Joseph.
Since I started running for city council, I have knocked on over 400 doors. I have been to the different communities. I have talked to members of the community. So it's very important for me to talk with people and do outreach. Outreach has always been part of my work experience and my life experience, whether it was when I was working at the United Nations serving 75,000 people, or whether I was an intern at the White House under the Domestic Policy Council serving Native American affairs. And through these experiences, I have learned the importance of putting people first and integrating their voice within the policies that we put forward as community leaders. So it's very important to me. I have done the work, and I will continue to do the work.
Candidate
Thank you.
Friend.
So the first part, how do you intend to listen to the public and engagement? My answer would be upfront. So we need robust communication and engagement upfront, and then we need to plan and proceed. Sometimes what happens is we have the robust engagement, but then we kind of plan, then we get some more engagement, and then we walk back. We need to make a decision and be brave and follow through with it. Number two question was, what's a specific idea? So I would focus on this room where I've spent a lot of time. I can testify, like I was very involved in the assault weapons ban, and there were a lot of NRA members who were there, and they were well armed, and they were pretty menacing. It's already scary to be up at that podium. We could calm this room a little bit. We could have people allowed to sit down. We could make it so that this is a more inviting and natural place, and we don't have stage fright. We could also have daycare on site so that people with kids can come and engage. I agree with the translator. So I like the community outreach, but if you want to be on the record, you have to be in here. So we have to make it easy to be in here and testify.
Candidate Dolan.
So our job as council members, if one of us or however many of us, 6 of us get elected, is we work for the people. And our current community engagement process is broken. The people who are yelling the loudest on the outskirts are the ones being heard, and the people who have things to do and families and can't spend 6 hours here on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday don't get heard, and so they kind of get lost in the mix. How would I address that? I would do more outreach to stakeholders earlier in the process to make sure that their voices are heard. Also similar to what Bob said is doing traveling council meetings, so you go to the people as opposed to having the people come here. And then also offering free babysitting or babysitting at the library so parents can come, single parents can come, so everyone has the opportunity to be engaged. Thank you.
Candidate McIntyre.
Once again, I'm going to take a little bit of a different tact here. First, I want to thank the League for helping us elect representative leaders. And that representative is the key word here, because no matter how involved you are, you can't come to every council meeting. You can't visit every TAB meeting or OSBT meeting. So that's why we have representative leaders. And so the League has done a great job in that. And as far as when we think about Boulder, we think about the things that make it great. Our open space, our mall, NCAR, these are emblematic of Boulder. Those great things had opposition. People walked away from those meetings saying, you know, that's not the role of government. We shouldn't do that. There was opposition to the downtown mall. So what I think the most important thing is elections matter, and it's to elect people that generally represent your views. That's the key.
Candidate Cure.
Thank you, Josephine. Well, for the past 15 years, I've stood in the middle of 13th Street twice a week selling vegetables and talking to a lot of people in Boulder. So I've heard a lot of different opinions on how fresh the eggs are or the taste of the carrots this year. So I think that degree of engagement is a part of being accessible to the people that you're representing, as Mark has just said, and I commend this current council for the engagement that they've done and the initiatives that they've done in regards to getting out from these chambers into the community. And I think, once again, that ability to be accessible is also not being beholden to an agenda, that we all have open minds, that we are representative of you, and so that we remain teachable. There are multiple instances where the initial idea sounds really good, but the practical implementation of that idea sounds horrible. So that is the part where we as representatives have to remain open to change.
Candidate Orba.
I wish I could have Bob's schedule. He's retired, and that's a luxury that he has. I am very good at reading between the lines and seeing who's not in the room. Now, that said, I would like to get more of my constituents in the room. I think that in 2019, we can do a much better job of using technology to our benefit. We can invite them early, and we can use media to do so. TV, paper, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. These are things at our fingertips. And if you invite them, they come. And that is what I will do. I will invite people. And I would really like to get the students and more diversity in the room. And I also echo some of my friends here in that we could get a translator and childcare on site.
Candidate McCord.
So local government doesn't have to be like national government. Local government is a place where we all have an opportunity to make a change. And in order to do that, you need to trust the people who you're electing. Now, what my experience has been is, as a Black woman, a lot of times I'm uncomfortable in situations because there aren't people who look like me in the room. And so I want you to know that when you're feeling uncomfortable about whatever issue it is, know that you have a representative who has been uncomfortable too, and I'm here to bring you along and usher you in terms of this change. Now, when you make policy that serves the most vulnerable of our population, that policy is going to actually impact and help the entire community. So as a city council person, every vote that I make will be through the social justice lens of my lived experience as being a Black woman, a Black homeowner, a Black business owner in this community, and I want you to be able to trust that. Thank you.
On behalf of the League, I would like to thank all of our candidates, not only for your participation in today's forum, but also for your participation in the democratic process. Running for office and serving as an elected official is hard work that all of us appreciate. I want to thank our forum volunteers and the Boulder City Clerk's Office for their essential help. And finally, I want to thank the forum audience here in the room and those viewing on TV or online. Thank you for your interest and for paying attention to these important policy issues. I remind you, please don't forget to vote in November. For more information about this upcoming election and the candidates, please go to the League's vote information site. That's called vote411.org. All of your personalized election information is now available on that site. The candidates have responded to questions, and that information is available on vote411.org. The League of Women Voters of Boulder County works throughout the year to help empower voters and defend our democracy. If you want to lend your time and skills to encourage civil engagement for all people in a nonpartisan manner, please join us. Information on all League activities is available downstairs and on lwvbc.org, or you can grab any one of our volunteers today. As we adjourn the forum, please, everyone join me in a round of applause for our candidates.